Uygur Autonomous Region. This National Nature Reserve has a very vast surface, and it's also bordered by another very famous Kekexili National Nature Reserve. Around these days, representatives and experts from the authorities as well as the Institute of Scientific Researches have organized an expedition, and together with them, I'm also focusing on the animals living here. Now it's the winter time, and in December, it is the mating season for the Tibetan antelopes. We know that inside this mountain Altun National Nature Reserve, there are more than 204 kinds of species of animals and another more than 300 varieties of vegetation. And today we are talking about the Tibetan antelope. It's one of the kinds of the inhabitants here. So what are the stories about this creature? Today we are joined by some experts. This is the untouched camera for surveillance and monitoring. I'd like to present this expert to you. This is Mr. Shang Peng from the local nature reserve station. And this is Director of Division, Mr. Zhao Xudong, for the campaign of protection of animals. And this is one of my colleagues. He's also from CCTV. He's the Director General of the film of documentary telling a story about the wild areas. This time, I come to the place to know the daily job of our experts to protect the animals and also assist them in getting through this winter time. What is the result of the recent days of researches and monitoring? We have already installed the cameras of surveillance. We have already captured a lot of important and interesting footage of the activities about those creatures. In the past, it was quite rare for us to capture those images, but this time we noticed that the frequency of their activities has significantly increased. It means that we have made important progress with our protection of the wild animals because they are more active and they have the courage to come out and live in this area. So you must be very happy to see the results. So what are you expecting to see with this surveillance camera? We have the three types of major animals, including the Tibetan antelopes, which may come to the mating season. So during this mating season, we can expect to see the fights between the individuals of the Tibetan antelopes. If the humans are around, maybe they will become more nervous and they cannot continue with their normal living. So we just put a camera here in the daytime, and during the nighttime, there would be 24-hour non-stop capture and filming of their activities. So in the future, all those documents would be used to help us to better analyze their activities. So in this area, we can expect to see a more intense frequency of activities of the antelope. Yes, and also the other animals, for example, the wolves, and also the Tibetan donkeys, etc. So over there, we can go and have a look at the recent discoveries. I believe that it would be the most challenging job for us to capture the footage about the Tibetan antelope because they are very vigilant. They are most afraid of the human activities. So it's very hard for us to capture the footage of the Tibetan antelope, but still we have succeeded with the filming. They are very vigilant, and we have to use the zoom objective in order to capture their image. And now I'd like to show you some footage that we have already made. So those are the Tibetan antelopes. It's one of the ungulate animals, and they prefer to be living in groups. That means this kind of animal is very gregarious. Compared with the other kinds of animals, for example, the wild donkeys, the Tibetan antelopes, they are so special. There was a certain kind of season or period. The male individuals would start to fight with each other. For example, they would circle some female individuals in order to form a harem of his. He's chasing around and he's protecting his own harem, and he would like to recruit as many female individuals as possible. So in recent days, we have also proceeded with a very in-depth discovery and investigation. I've noticed that they never stopped with the running. Sometimes they are chasing away the other male individuals, and sometimes they are attracting some more female ones. During the nighttime, we have already the record that the mating frequency for a male is more than 40 times. And during the daytime, it's more like the time for food, and they are more vigilant during the daytime. For the males, they will usually remain at the end part of the whole group, of the whole population. And they're always on guard. We know that in the past, before the coming of the mating season, usually it's the males living with the other males and the females living with the other females. It's a natural division of the population. And once the mating season comes, they start to have the mixture of the groups, of the individuals. We start to see the harems formed for each individual of the male Tibetan antelopes. In previous years, we know that due to the intervention of human activities, it was very hard for us to see with our own eyes in nature the appearance of those Tibetan antelopes. And luckily, after years of hard efforts of protection, we can discover more than hundreds of them. For example, during the mating season, most of the female Tibetan antelopes have been divided and recruited into the harems of each individual males. For a smaller group of harem, there may be 5 to 6 female members, and for a larger group of harem, you can expect to see about a dozen of females. So during this mating season, it's so hard and energy consuming for the males because they have to stay vigilant during the whole time, and they have to chase away the other males, and they also have to do their best to attract as many female individuals as possible. They're always running, they are fighting against the others, they are sending out some alerts against the other males. So they are doing multiple tasks at the same time. It's so hard and challenging for them to remain multitasking. And in Kekeshili Nature Reserve, During the fight, I've noticed that some Tibetan antelopes, they would insert their horns into the belly of the other male antelopes. So that was quite fierce fight between the male antelopes. So in this mating season, it's also the most dangerous time for the individuals because they have such pointed horns on the head of the males. In the past, we've also noticed that some of the males, they have broken their horns, and some others, they are hit hard by the others' horns. If they break their horns, then they don't have their weapons against the other predators, for example, the wolves. Some days ago, we have picked up some broken parts of the horns. This is one of the horn piece from the antelope. We have asked for the opinions of the experts, but this fallen part may be the result of a fierce fight, and it's a freshly broken part. Because from the color, we can see it's still very fresh. If it's an old one, then the color would be more whitish. And I've also noticed that there are a lot of ring-like ridges. Every 3 ring-like ridges may be the signal of 1 year. So you can tell the age of the Tibetan antelope by counting the ring-like ridges, but also according to the experience of the local farmers, sometimes for every year added to the age, you may expect to see 2 more ring-like ridges to the horn of this animal. Usually the length of this horn can be between 60 centimeters to 1 meter long. So usually we can find a lot of broken pieces like that. And they can be served in different purposes. It's not that often for us to be able to pick up some fallen parts after a fight between the antelopes. After a whole summer season, because here the sunshine is very hot, and some of the parts of the horn will be broken down further by the sunlight, and it will be further fractured. And for the male individuals, because they have to chase back or they have to fight down the other competitors in order to win their herons, it's not the right for each individual of the males. Yes, only the winners can win the right to mate. Like that, the best genes can be passed down from one generation to the next. So in recent days, we have also captured some other footage. Here's a wolf eating up a hurt Tibetan antelope. There are the other animals and also living in population in groups. However, their group size cannot be as big as that of the Tibetan antelopes. For example, the other caprines and also the other animals, the living creatures. In our footage captured, first of all, 2 to 3 wolves, they would like to chase us away. They are sending us the signals. We've discovered some strange object in the distance. We would like to go nearer to see. And finally, we have made it clear that it was the product of hunt, is the result of hunt of the wolf. And that's why the wolves would like to chase us away. And it's very hard for them to find such a result, a big product of the predation. So they would not easily abandon. First of all, they would try to drag them to a safe place after the observation on the environment. So first of all, the wolf would drag the object to a certain place that is considered by itself to be safe, and later on he would start to feed on the animal. So we can use the zoom object to observe the whole situation. We've noticed that even during the feeding time, the wolf is still very vigilant. He's looking around to see whether the other creatures, including the people, whether they are coming near. And it's really difficult time for the antelopes to pass. Sometimes during their internal fights, there would also be some death tolls. For example, some antelopes would insert their horns into the bellies of the others, and only the strongest can survive. It's also the rule of the jungles here. And what about the speed of the running of those antelopes? 60 to 80. The Tibetan antelopes, they are the best runners here. It's a very magical creature. If you look at their face, they have the nasal swellings. And this nasal swellings can help them to better breathe even on this plateau environment. It's like with the most advanced vehicles, they have some parts to accelerate the speed of the vehicle, and we can find similar structure, but naturally made to the body of the antelopes, and that's why they can be so fast in running. And I think it's good for them. If they cannot have this good point, they cannot have this advantage of a physical structure, then they cannot outrun the other predators. During the whole mating season, at the end, will they form other kinds of division of group? Yes, it will continue. The males will come back to the males, and the females go back to the females. For the next year, by April, all the females would gather together. They will mount up to their calving ground. And according to our observations, maybe sometimes we don't have to wait for April, maybe even earlier date. They would start to get together in a female group, and they would start to leave all the males, and they are totally separated. After the mating season, gradually the males would be gathered together and the females be a different group. And during this monitoring in wintertime on the animals, we've discovered that in this mountain Altun National Nature Reserve, there has been some changes with the distribution for the Tibetan antelopes. In the past, we can find greater group in the west, and nowadays they are larger in size in eastern part. In 2016 and 2017, we can observe some of them, but just a few. But nowadays, if you come out for the observation, we can always find some groups of the antelopes, big or small in size. For example, each individual male guiding 5 up to a dozen of the females. So when we reduce the interference from the human side, then we give the space back to our antelopes. And according to our observation, we have already counted more than 200 of them living here. After the mating season, for the females, will they go back to the western mountain area for the calving, or they will find another calving ground here in the eastern part? In other areas, we have discovered a group of 200 Tibetan antelopes mating here. Actually, it's not like what we have observed in the past. They have changed the place for mating. In the past, in that particular area, we have discovered more Tibetan antelopes. And starting by recent years, we start to have the opportunity to see the Tibetan antelopes here also in the eastern part. So with the improvement of the environment, we can see that they have more confidence in the faraway areas, and they can migrate a little bit to different new places. And by a mountain area, every year we would go there to investigate that very famous calving ground for the antelope, for the female Tibetan antelopes. This year, what we have observed here in the eastern part may be the result of some new migrants. Usually we talk about Xinjiang Nature Reserve and Kekeshili Nature Reserve. You are very familiar with all those places. And for ordinary people, we have the Tuzihu Lake. It's about 200 kilometers away. It's a very famous place also for the calving ground of the antelopes. Part of the antelopes, they are from the Qiangtang, some others from Kekeshili, and some from the mountain Altun. But for that Qiangtang Lake, it's very limited in surface. And sometimes they would be hiding in the valleys in order to give birth to the calves. So this year, we can expect to see the mating here, but later on, they would migrate to the other place for the calving. For example, the Zhongnan Lake by Kekeshili Natural Nature Reserve. After giving birth to the calves, they can bring the babies back to this place. Usually, within several hours after the birth, the young cows, they can start to stand up. If they cannot do this, they cannot stand up, then they cannot survive on a plateau. We have the salty water lakes. All the lakes considered as the calving grounds, they are this kind of lakes. And there is a peak area welcoming a very large size of the Tibetan antelopes. Over there, we can count a lot of heads of the Tibetan antelopes. We've already visited that place. It was marvelous. Over there by the Tuzihu Lake, they are giving birth to the babies. It's one of the most ancient calving ground. It's the calving ground discovered in the earliest date. And it's also reported on the earliest date. What is the size of the population of cows produced there? Actually, all the Tibetan antelopes living in this National Nature Reserve would all migrate to that calving ground every year, and we can expect to see 2,000 of them. So for the calving season, it's by the end of June and the beginning of July. So they have to survive this cold winter time. They have to protect themselves from the capture of the natural predators, and they have to survive all the long days of the gestation. And we know that the survival is another big problem for them. Could you please tell us the rate of survival and also the gestation? The survival rate of the calves may be between 30 to 40% in previous years. by them, there's also massive illegal poaching. So in the past, we have discovered a lot of bodies due to the illegal massive poaching.
更持续、更稳定这种增长，就还需要大家去探讨很多种方式。
Some of the dead females, they have still the cows in their belly. And in recent years, luckily, we have restored the size of the population, and we have also stabilized this group size. How can we help to sustain the growth of the population? We have to discover a lot of solutions. Human factors are important one. We have to attach greater importance to the protection of the wild animals. We have to show our care and protection of the wildlife, because the wildlife is an important friend of ours. Yesterday in our live streaming program, we have also touched upon this subject. We have this joint mechanism among the provinces and autonomous regions to protect the wildlife. And here we are now in the Altun National Nature Reserve. It's in the Xinjiang village of the Plateau prefecture of Xinjiang, Uygur autonomous region. This is the largest village in size. Actually, the whole surface of this village equals the county it's in. We have very limited number of people. We have only registered 5 households in this village, so there are only 20 people living in this vast place. And in wintertime, you can see no one. It's kind of no man's land here. It's also for the purpose of protecting our wildlife. Back then, we have decided to invite the local residents to retreat from this place. We have invited Mr. Zhang Hongwei, the secretary of the party from the village. Please say hi to everyone. My name is Zhang Hongwei. I'm the party secretary from the Xinjiang County, and I take care of the village. By then, we have decided to give this plateau area back to the Tibetan antelopes. We have initiated this program by 2008, and we have started the application by 2009. By 2009, we have 153 households here. Considering the protection of the environment, we started to persuade our villagers to live in another place, and we help them to transfer their home to another place. First of all, we invite them to see the new places. If they want to go to the new place, then we are more than happy to help them to migrate. So a lot of the farmers and the keepers, they are willing to move. At first, some people are hesitating, and gradually they have decided to move away, and by 2013, the majority of the villagers, they have moved away. So today, Mr. Zhang, you only have so few villagers. Yes, and our country has decided to maintain a very big surface of the steppe, and every year we can receive the subvention from the government. We do no more pasturing here. Only 2 households are living here. They are the keeper of the whole place. They are protecting the whole area. In winter, they will just leave the place so that the animals, they can have a bigger playground. Now we are at the altitude of more than 4,000 meters. This is absolute plateau, and winter can be really cold. And those freezing days represent with 2/3 of the whole year. And it's not a best place for people to live. But still, the animal keepers, they have lived in this area for so many years, after generations and generations. But finally, they have decided to abandon this land and give it back to nature and back to wildlife, so that wild animals they can enjoy a safer place living here. Some of the officials are living in the mountain area, and some others they are living at the feet of the mountain to serve the villagers. So we mentioned the vast size of this county. How big is it? It's actually 65,000 square kilometers. During the winter season, we will also keep up with the patrolling. So here used to be a house of the goats and of the caprines. It's been abandoned for many years. You can find the feces of the wildlife, for example, the donkey feces. These are the feces of the wild donkeys. You can find the footprints of the animals everywhere, and the county government is not very far away. Over there, you can distinguish a very small shed. I'm very curious because there's no more people living here. Why you stick to this area and you have kept the government here? Because we have this joint mechanism for protection of the wildlife, we have also transformed the priorities of our work. In the past, we are safeguarding the villagers, and now since they moved to another place, our main objective of work is to safeguard the wildlife, the animals. What's your comment on your work and what's your feelings? Some officials, upon arrival, they could not understand why we have to stick to this place. Until now, I have 20 people working for me. Some people, they have doubts. However, according to President Xi, a good environment would be the greatest fortune for humankind. And for your observatory, you have 7 people working here. And 7 people of the observatory plus the 10 people working permanently in the county government. So on this vast land of Plateau, you have 17 people only. Is it safe for you to live in such a small group here? We have trained our people. You know that living in the plateau, sometimes you may fall sick. So we have to train our people and pay attention to their health status. Last year, our nature reserve center has been attacked by the bears. So we have immediately retreated our people to a lower altitude. And this year, for the rescue station of the animals, the keepers and the doctors, we have moved them to better conditions of housing, to a more consolidated house. And we have also intensified our patrolling work around this area to check out the wildlife, and we're always in monitoring work about the activities of the wildlife. So it's only more than a dozen of people working here. You don't have villagers to take care of. So what's the daily work for you.
像咱们我看还有不少这个管护点分布在各
We
个地
would
方，
check
就
out
是平时
the
除了咱们
daily
中心站之
development
外，
of this
在这个广
area
场的各个角落里头
of
也
more
有
than
驻守的人。
200 kilometers.
对它那
We
个
also
冬季，
work
其实
with
我
the
们还
local
有一项
libraries.
就是比较重要的一项工作，就是防止一些
In our
法
county
分子在
government,
冬季
we would
开
renew
展
all
一些
those
这个
books.
穿越活动，导致
And from time to time, on a regular
尤其是
basis, the
近几
local
年，
library
像我们
would
这
give us
发
new
展
batches
这
of
个穿
books.
越，
So
导致
during
一
the
些
winter
热的
season,
一些
our officials can also take full use of this free time to read
所以在
books.
这个时间，其实我们也不能
In
利用
winter,
导致在各个站点
there's
都在
another important work is
你们守
to
护的效果明显吗？
fight
这
against
几
all
年到时候
those
我觉得通过到时候我们
wrongdoers
开展
and
的一
fight
些复
against
联机制，
illegal
包括
poaching.
我们和辖区的一些共管，导致我们这一块保护区的，这块环境还
And
是
some
得
people,
到了很大的改
they
善。
may
光是野生动物的
break
数量和
down the
种族的数量上
regulations
的
and the
发生了一些
laws
变化，
by
包括这一
passing
块的
by
那个
this
环境治理环
area
境
forbidden
得
to
到了
human
很大的
activities.
改
So
善。
we have
这
to
一块导致
get them
现在
out
开
of
始
this
有直接
area.
判定，导致这很多年
Are you
一
satisfied
些
with the results of the
那个
work?
盗猎的一些现象
We
在
have
都
already established a joint mechanism for protection for the
说到
benefits
你
of the
们在这个
environment.
平时
We can
各
discover
个
the
地方去采
benefits
这个
of
荒野
our
主题
work,
的
for
纪录
example, the
片，
increase
在
of
这
the
这些地方，
individuals in the
你有
groups
什么样
for
的
the
感受？
animals
就
and
是
also
大家对野
the
生动物的这种
optimization of the
保护
environment
你觉得以及
conditions.
成效啊什么的。
是这样的，我刚才说的，就是
So
因为是管护站跟
we have
跟那个
improved the
像其实
environment.
比较
At the
特
same
殊，
time, we
这
have
其实
cracked
它大
down
部分地方都是重叠的。
all those
所以
illegal
你说
poaching
乡政府，
activities.
其实我们跑了很多地方，乡政府他们，你看他们俩选择的地方，基本上都是在一个
And
一起
sir,
这样的缩小
you
的人
have been
范围
traveling
内
around
内的建筑啊，
to
所以
make the
区域内
films
所以
about the
很
protection
多的
of
空
the
间让给那个
wild
人工
animals.
是他们也是共同的一个目标。
What is your
另
comments?
外一个就是这样的话，就是他们本身就一个是历史延续的，就有人居住的地方，世居在这里。另外一部分
For the
是
county
83年
government
湖区
and also the
看过
local
来就是
observatory,
两个
sometimes
单位
their
两个一个政府
areas of responsibility can be overlapping,
他们
and you can find their respective buildings in the same area. So with this kind of concentration of human activities within a confined area, for the rest of the area, we can leave it
这些保护区
free
它
to the animals.
它的那个海拔很高，然后条件很艰苦，面积
And
又很大，
for the
所以
several
像
units
刚
of
才
work,
都说了，管护人员一个月要8天，有些人就
locally
休息一
they
下，因为
can
他的体力
work
不能时间
together
长了就会积累好多高
and
原疾病
promote their
身体
work
肯定是特别不利
hand in hand.
然后但是这么多
I've
人在这
also
个
visited a
这个
lot
荒
of
原当
natural
中就
reserves.
在不断的去巡护和去监管，然后
Within all
采
those
用了这
nature
种方式，我们
reserves,
四个保护区联动机制啊那种为了信息共享。
usually we
但
can
主要
find
主要
different
还是
kind
要
of
我们普通的人
difficulties like what we
还
have
还有
here,
一
the
些
high
就是
altitude
所谓的那个
and
旅游
also the
发烧友
vast
那些
land
海
to
底要控制
patrol.
自己的行为，
From
不要
time
那
to
个
time
就
during the
是
day,
没
we
有
have
通
to
报，
ask
就
our
是在
colleagues
为
working
为了
here to
控
take
制
a
自己
rest.
自己
Otherwise,
快
they
了，
would
给
fall
他
sick
增加很多
because
很多的麻烦负
this
担。
is
这样的，而
high
且对
altitude
这种的野
area.
生态破坏的话，它是很长期，需要很长时
And
间修
in
复
other
的。
areas,
就是
there's
如
the
果大家
mechanism
都
for
有这种
information
就是
sharing
哎
and
不顾
protection,
不
joint
顾
protection
那个真正的环境那个到底需
for
承载
the
力，自己去
individuals,
上
for the
面去碾压，
tourists.
或者是在
I
非法
would
穿
like
越，
to
这个现在这种情况最多嘛。其他的
urge
有道理
everyone
不
to
不存在了。
respect the
然后
rules.
其他的那
Please
个就是
don't
生态的开矿
break
也一直矿产
the
已经
laws and the
大幅度的
regulations.
下降，基本
Please
上都对
do
自然
not
都还给自
go
然了。
into the
所以我们
forbidden
就
areas
对
and
普通
just
的
for
人来说，
fun
就可
and
能
for
也是要给
sightseeing,
他们增加
because
麻
on the
烦，
one hand,
对
you are
自然
creating more
一个
burdens
幸
for
福
the
环
local
境更好一
personnels and
点。
officials
对，可能
because
很多
they
人都
are
觉得，
already
你说我这
suffering
个
from
穿
this
越啊，
very
大家都
bad
想到阿尔
working
金下来，人都知
conditions.
道阿尔金
And
山
on the
自
other
然风
hand,
特别
if
美，
you are
那个
leaving
保
your
留了最纯净的
footprint
自然，
here in
然后
this
有最
no man's
接近
land,
原生态的这种
you
风
may
光，还有那么多
cause
成群的野生动物，大家都想
some
到体验一下。可能也
unrepairable
会有人觉得，
damages to
哎，
the
我就是车跑
environment.
一趟，可能
So
造成不了多大
everyone
的
can do its
影
part
响。
to
但实际上对
reduce
动物来
our
说呢，会有
negative
什么样的？
impact on the nature. For a lot of
这个
people,
它的影响是很大的。你像咱们这块属于高
they
原
are
荒漠的
curious
这个生
about
态系统，
the nature
像咱们这块的
reserve.
植
They
被
will
覆盖
want to
率
see
很
by
低，
their
然
own
后很多
eyes
植被它的
this
生长期
clear
很短，像
environment
7、8
in
月
the
份它才
mountain,
刚
Altun,
变绿的
etc.,
对
and
对。
also
像你的车
those
辆在这个草
groups
地
of
上碾压
lovely
过以后，
wild
它
creatures.
可能
They
这块可
think
能它
that
就
maybe by
就
one
直接就
trip
荒废掉了，它
in
就不会再长。
car it would
它
do
这个如
no
果说像
harm
这
to
种
the nature,
非法
but
穿越的人
it's
员
not
在这个咱
true.
们这个高原上，
What
这
is
个
the
纵火
impact
驰骋，你
exactly?
这个压过去的很多这种车辙印，
It can be
那对咱
huge
们这个草场
impact,
的碾压，
hi-
它是一
impact
个不可
because
逆的一个
here
过程，
on the
它需要
plateau,
很
the
长很长的时间
vegetation
才能恢复过来。
cover is
所
really
以它一方
thin,
面对
and
咱们
they
这个
would
植
just
被
turn
高原
green
植
in
被是一
August.
个不可逆的一个影响。
If
二一方面
there's a
像我们这个
car
大面积的这个
passing by
保
for
护区，
this
它存在有很多
track
这种特
area,
别自由的这些野生动物，像藏羚羊呀、藏野驴呀，还有这个咱
maybe
们野牦
you
牛
can
啊，
never
很多这
expect to
个
see
咱们这个
the
穿越这些
rebirth
这个
of the
发烧友吧，
vegetation. The
它可能不
the
走，它
grass
这
would
个
never
非常
grow
小，
back,
然后
or
它
sometimes it
一
may
影响这些野生
take
动物这个，
years
它
and
就慢
years
慢
for
的
the grass to
它
come
可能
back.
就是从这块区域就离开了。它好多现在就是一
And
方面呢
secondly,
是
for this
侵扰
vast
到他们这个
area
生活
of
环境，
the
有
nature
一些比较
reserve,
正在
there
在
are
被
a
伤害
lot
的
of
这些
free
藏羚羊
animals
或者
like the
它对它
Tibetan
这个它的
antelopes
以后这个
and
繁
also
殖
the
啊，调查
yaks
都有一个很大的
and
影响。
also the
还有一些
wild
像咱们进来一
donkeys.
些咱
Some
们
of
这个
them
发烧友，他进来不可能说他不吃不喝吧，他要
visitors and
产生一些
tourists,
这种人为
they
的这些
don't
垃圾
have
吧。
any
有好多
knowledge
人觉
about
得
the
啊，我这个果
wildlife.
皮
They are
这东
just
西对自
curious
然就
about
是
the
它会降
animals,
解的，不会对这个地方有什么影响。
and
但是
they
从这
do
个
not
生物的这
know
个角
that
度来
their
说，
actions
它
and
不会
their
带进来任何一个
intrusion
不属于
have
这片土
already
地的任何一个
interrupted
东西，
the
它对这
normal
儿都是有影
life
响
of
的。
our
它这个
wildlife.
影响可能我们感觉不到，它会带来一些细菌，带来一些病毒，
Maybe
带
it's
来一
just a
些
single
其他的
trip.
东西。这
You
些动
could
物它原
have
来没有吃
already
过这些东西，
freaked
被
all
这个
those
动物
animals
产生的
out.
影响，它都是
And
我们
also,
无法
you
去预见
have
的。
to
所以
understand
我
that
们做
for
的
the
最大的这个
travelers,
尽
they
可
have
能
to
的
produce
不要
some
去这
daily
块
life
造
waste
成
for
这
the
种不
garbages
管是这个
and
进来这个
anything you can
非法穿
imagine
越呀，
for
或
the
者说你
daily
在这儿丢一个什么东西啊，
mint
它对它的这个影
daily
响都是非常大的。
survivals.
我
For
们其实我
example,
们作
the
为这个
garbages
它
and
对
the
这块非常热爱
packing
和向往是可以理
packages
解的。
and
但是对野
some
生动物它
strange
这个东西肯
object
定就
that
是我
the
们就像我们这
wildlife
个
would
喜马拉雅山和
never
我们这个阿尔卑斯山
encountered
和
in
古
their
代的
own
这个山
life.
一样，我
For
们就是尽可
example,
能减少
the
这些人为的活
strange
动，
fruit
就是
or
让
the
它们自由
waste
自
of
在
the
的在这块儿
fruit,
的生息繁衍，不要对它进行干涉，
all
这
those
是对它
objects
最好
could
的保
be
护。
consumed later by the
对，我
animals.
前几
It
天
can
跟我们的保护人员在
devastate
一
the
起
health
交
of
流
the
的时候，
animals,
也说
and
就是有的时候
not to
那种
mention
源
the
头会碰上
bacteria
一个
and
进
other
来水下的特
diseases
别的
brought
大，
by
然
human
后所
being
有
into
本
this
来可
clean
食的
land.
草都被盖到了水下面。其实对野生动物来说，有很多动物它都
So
挺不到
for
冬
each
天，这个雪
individual,
化了之后，
for
那
each
个时候我们会
citizen
人
in
为
this
的去
country,
给它
please try
救助
our
一些
best
吗？还是
to
这个动物
stay
其实看到
away
你给它的
from
东西
this
它就不
area,
吃。
give this place back
我们
to
每年
the
就是
wildlife.
这种
And
咱们这个就是一种知识性的这种饲料的储备。
sometimes
就是
there's heavy
尤其是这
snow
几年有一些极端天气，像去年的话，
on
就
this
是
vast
大
land,
雪
and all
下
the
得比较
grass
大，
and
然后咱
vegetation
们这块
are
儿草场
covered,
它都被覆盖了。
and
去
some
年
of the
到2017
animals
年，
cannot
然
even
后我们
wait
就
to
往它的
see
身上发现这个，尤其这个一
the
个
coming of spring.
这个大面积的都去
And in that extreme condition, will you go out and help to feed them? In recent years, there are more extreme weathers. For example, the heavy snows last year. On our steppe, the majority of the places are covered by the heavy
原
snow.
一并的监测。二一方面，我们就是通过这个在极端天气下这种饲草料的这种投喂，就是尽可能的，就是让他们能够就是有一个更好的环境去越冬。但是我们就是可能是尽可能去减少这种行为，尤其这种极端天气嘛，为了这个他们以后这个就是尤其这个野生动物，它这个像这个数量虽然这几年也是不断的增加，但是为了它能够长久可持续的发展，我们也可以通过一些很少这种人为活动，就是确保它能够
We have strengthened the monitoring, and at the same time, we have also
有一些
added
就是
some more
比较特
feed
别微
for
弱
the
的，它在
animals.
那地方我们
But we
看
will
到它
try our
就是
best
几
to
天它就
reduce
在那
the
个活动，
interference.
就
We only stand
弱
out
的
to
那
help
个
them in extreme
我们看
weathers.
起来更加突出一
In the
些。
future, we know that
但
there
是
will
野生
be more and more members in the group, and they have to learn
饿日它也不敢
these
吃。
capabilities to survive the winter. Will they
好多动物
feed
它对人
on
类
the
的恐
grass
惧
you
感觉
give
都已经
them?
刻在了骨子里。比如说像藏羚
For the
羊，
weak
之所以
ones,
它的警惕性这么高，
which remained still in the same place. We will try to give some feed to them. But for the wild ones, they would not come to the food because those are unknown objects for them and they don't have the courage to come back. For some animals, especially the wild ones, the Tibetan antelopes, even after so many years of protection measures in place, they are still very afraid of the humankind. I believe that that fear has been embedded in their DNA. I believe that this memory, fearful memory about the human being, has been passed down from one generation to another generation of the antelopes. Sometimes when we just discover the antelopes, they will start to run very rapidly. Especially in the previous years. But luckily in these several years, we have strengthened the protection measures, and they have lowered a little bit the bar. Sometimes when we pull off our car by the side of the road, we can discover several individuals of the Tibetan antelopes. They will look at us. If you sit still there in the same place, they will start to circle. I believe that the memory about human beings and the memory about the harms brought by the human beings has been passed down from one generation to another. Usually they would have this intrinsic reaction to avoid the approaching of their natural predators and all the other beings that considered would do harm to them. For example, some days ago, there's a wild yak coming near. And later on, the Tibetan antelope started to send out some signals to this wild yak. And they have stepped on the ground. With this vibration of land as a kind of transmission of the signal to the other side. So that's why we have persuaded that all the visitors to avoid visiting this area, because when there's the car passing by, it's also a high vibration of the land, and some Tibetan antelopes already they have difficulty in the gestation. If there's a vehicle passing by, it can freak them out, and it's even more difficult for them to get pregnant and keep the baby. That's why by the outskirts of this nature reserve, we have to put up the board of signs telling people to lower down the speed of their vehicles. Even it is allowed for you to travel on a certain road, so it's highly recommended that you show your respect to the wildlife and please be polite and lower the speed of your vehicle. Some days ago, I've been here, and today I'm visiting this place again. For all those people that have love for the wildlife, you may find out the fact that if you can show your respect to the wildlife, then there would be ties of confidence established between the two sides, and that is so precious. Because that is a kind of trust coming back from the wildlife side. I believe that this is a
牧
kind of
民养羊在
symbol.
这里留下的这个养殖的
Those are the
奉献，它旁
traces
边这
of the
些
daily life
野
left
生的
by
野驴的
the
粪便
former
呢，现在
villages
也开始
here.
慢慢多
Today
起
they
来
are
了。现在我
abandoned
觉得
because the
人和
villagers
动物
have
之间，
decided
人
to
和自然之
abandon
间的这
this
种和谐和信任，
hometown
可能我们
area,
会需要
this
很多年去建立，也需要我们每一个人
predecessor's
共同努
place
力。
to move to
好的，
another
感谢收
village
看
to
今天的
live
直
so that
播。
they can give
那
the
我
nature
们
back to the
为
Tibetan
期3
antelope
天的
and
阿尔
also
蒂
the
山
other
科考之旅的直
wildlife.
播到今天呢就
Over
结束了。
there is the
到
feces
明年
of
6 月
the
底7月初的时候，
caprines
刚才我们几位
kept
专家也
in
说，
captivity
是
by
藏
the
羚羊
villagers.
产崽的时
And
候，那
by
个时候呢，
this
我们也会
side, we
跟着
can
一起
see
到
the
兔子
growing
湖去，
feces
跟
of
着
the
科
other
考人员的脚
wildlife.
步，再去
It
记
may
录
take
他们的
a
生活
lot
形
of
状。我们
years
到
to
那个时候再
realize
见。
the
好了，感谢
peaceful
大家的收看，
coexistence
再见。
between the wildlife and also the human beings. But I believe it's worth the effort. And it's also the end of our annual expedition. We would start again next year by summer. I will guide you to Tuzihu Lake to record their status quo by then. So thank you for tuning in. See you next time. Bye bye.